Good. Good afternoon. I think it is for you, and very good morning for me.
Yes, yes. Hopefully, I'm just going to turn this up a little bit here and hopefully we can, yeah, sorry if you were waiting for me for a while. We could not get onto Instagram. It was just so weird. We just couldn't do anything. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. But anyways, here we are. So welcome.
Thank
Glad you
you.
could join us today.
Thanks for
All
having me.
right. Yeah. So, we've been doing a series on some Australian wine estates, specifically in Western Australia. So some of you that have been watching our virtual tastings weekly, we did an estate in Swan Valley, our friends over at Faber. And so now today we are still in Western Australia, but we're talking to Umamu. So Colin, you are the viticulturalist of AHA Viticulture. So can you first tell us exactly what a viticulturalist is, about your company, what exactly you do, and just give us the 411 on all of that.
So I guess viticulturist is a pretty easy one to describe. I mean, a grape grower is probably a more simplistic way of describing it. So essentially we do the farming and then winemakers do the vinification. So we deal with the real thing, I think, but we'll get into a lot of arguments with that.
Yeah. So you're not actually the winemaker, you're just dealing with the grapes themselves.
No, but I mean, yeah, that's a moot point though, Marcia, because I think wine's made in the vineyard.
I agree. I agree. Okay, but you're not actually, like the chemist in the winery putting the grapes and them into something that we can actually drink.
Definitely. That is not me. I am the grape grower.
Okay, got it.
So my business manages vineyards, and we've managed Umamu Estate for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. So it's been a great privilege. It's a beautiful old vineyard. So in terms of Margaret River, the region's about 50 years old, and some of the plantings in Umamu go back to the 70s. Yeah. So it is in many ways one of the founding vineyards in the region. So it's been really fun vineyard to manage.
Cool.
Not many blocks you have around with Cabernet that have that sort of age.
Yeah, and I mean we're going to get to that once we get to the Cabernet. We'll really talk about that because I think it's astounding. Even the ages of the vintages that we have right now in the store are just unheard of for Australian wines for sure.
Yeah, pretty mind blowing.
Yeah. So do you only work for Umamu, or do you work for other companies as well?
No, I do manage a few other vineyards as well, and then sometimes I do some consulting for some of the bigger wineries as a viticulturalist. Because I'm a tertiary trained viticulturalist, I will just go in and have a look at their operation and just give a bit of feedback. And some of them are partners with Umamu when we do things together as well.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. And sorry, you said you've been with Umamu for 10 years, was it?
10 years, a little bit over 10 years, I think.
Okay, yeah, excellent.
And it's quite interesting because we are actually picking the Cabernet today.
Yeah, most people it's, I guess, is this about the right timing still for Cabernet? All the whites will be...
Yeah, so all the whites are off. Look, Cabernet, we like to try and hang it as long as we can last year. So sometimes the weather will tell us we have to sort of come in, and sometimes we'll get 2 weeks in the late sort of autumn period where we can hang a little longer. It's been pretty good hang. We had a good look at it yesterday with one of the winemakers. I think we pushed everything we could out of it, and I think that's what we really try and do with Cabernet.
Okay, all right. Do you pick the Shiraz before the Cabernet?
Yeah, Shiraz is probably a couple of weeks sometimes before the Cabernet.
Okay.
And then Merlot before again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, Margaret River, Western Australia, I mean, it's a long history of winemaking and culture there. But it seems to only really be being noticed in the last 10 or so years. Do you think anything has changed in that time to give Western Australia more of a presence now than it ever has before?
Yes, it's a really interesting thing. I think for a long time, Marcia, we had the privilege of just drinking our own wine. Yeah. We're so isolated here, and we're so far away from anyone else. I think Perth is probably the most isolated city in the world, and then we're 3 hours away from Perth. So I think it just took a long time for us to be able to get, it's a small region, so we don't have huge marketing traction. And we're sort of always in West Australia, a little bit overshadowed by the big South Australian regions. We've got probably a bigger marketing spend, so they tend to get their sort of international message out quicker. Whereas for so long, the production in Margaret River could really just feed Perth, and then West Australia, and then slowly into the eastern states of Australia. So it just took a long time to really be able to get the sort of energy and momentum going to get into international markets.
Mm-hmm. So what is the terroir that you have there? Are you closer to the sea? What do you got there?
It's just awesome, Marcia. So basically, if you look to the region, it's like a sort of a fat peninsula that sticks out. And so you've got a little bit of ocean above you in a big bay. You've got the Indian Ocean to the west of you, and below you we've got what we call the Southern Ocean, which I don't think really exists, but it's essentially you're surrounded on three sides by water, and you've got about 100k peninsula going up and down. We're not really a mountainous region, and I think Canadians would laugh me out of town if I mentioned a mountain. We might have a few little hills. So it's a sort of undulating landscape. And what it does is it creates sort of regions at the tops of the hills, which are gravelly, where a lot of the soil's been washed out, and then valley floors that are slightly richer. So you can sort of match your varieties up, and you can change your aspects on the little undulations. So you've got a really beautiful maritime climate. And what that really does for us, Marcia, is every afternoon a sea breeze will rush in summer. So you never really get those hot afternoons that you get inland where you get that sort of continental effect. You'll get a warm morning, and then just when the grapes starting to feel the heat a little bit, you'll get a cool coastal breeze, and they'll just keep that ripening process going through the whole day rather than having a sort of plants will shut down when they get too hot. And that's when you start to sort of develop sugar without flavour, I think, and a good region will start to say, okay, I can ripen my tannin at the same speed that I can ripen my sugar. And that's when you get into really good terroir.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that phenolic ripeness is very important. Yeah, very important.
Especially if you want really good Cabernet.
Yeah, for sure. The thicker skinned grape, very, very important. So do you guys have pre-phylloxeric vines at all?
Yeah, so because of that isolation, again, if we go back to that point, all vines are on own roots on the state, which is, around the world, a pretty rare thing.
Yes.
So it's Cabernet.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I mean, I think that there is some in southeastern Australia too that have some, very dark there that have.
Yeah, Victoria on the other side has.
Yeah. So do you have you see on the internet those signs, the strict, do not walk into this vineyard. Do you have any of that?
Yeah, we do. I mean, I actually sit on the one of the national boards for things like biosecurity. So phylloxera has to come in a bit of soil. So you've got a little bit of buffer there. And to be honest, it hasn't moved from Victoria over to South Australia yet. So it's another big movement to get to us. So there's probably other pests I'd worry about more at the moment than phylloxera. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It's always something to worry about farming. My goodness.
Yeah, exactly. It's never ending, right? So, Umamu, just like many other Australian states, I mean, you grow Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc, and you have a Semillon here in your blend, and there's Shiraz and Cabernet, of course. Is there any other grapes that you are experimenting with out there? Like, we know that southeastern Australia is doing a lot with Italian grapes, and I know that there's some Portuguese grapes that's growing up in Swan Valley there. So wondering if you're doing anything like that, any experimentation of that sort of thing.
We are. We tend to, I don't think this part of Australia's climate is going to get so challenged to the point of warmth where we need to change our geographical selection of varieties. So we probably will stick with the French varieties, but probably where our refinement is now and the challenge lies for us is clones. Within, say, Cabernet, Shiraz and Chardonnay, there's hundreds and thousands of clones. I mean, you go to France and it's just Entave or one of those big nurseries, and it's mind-blowing how many clones you can have. So, being a young region, we sort of came together as, pretty pioneer planting with very very small selection of clonal material. So for us, the improvement is to take, we believe Chardonnay and Cabernet will be Margaret River's future, probably. We will probably make some aromatic whites because they do go well in our region. But the two heroes of the region will probably stay Chardonnay and Cabernet. And I think we're lucky enough that we don't have a climate change factor that the Swan's got and the Eastern Coast has got to say that we probably do need to move on to Mediterranean varieties. So for us, the challenge will be, okay, so which clones are going to be the best to produce those? And we've got some beautiful clone of Gin, which is our local clone of Chardonnay over here. And I think if you put 10 Chardonnays on a table, most people from Margaret River can pick their own Margaret River Chardonnay, buy that clone. It has a real distinct richness and it really sits out from the pack, and it's made it really easy. Chardonnay is such a busy place, Marcia. It's crazy. Everyone makes it. So to find your Chardonnay on an international stage, you've really got to have something special. And for us, that's come down to clone. That clone can't be replicated. It's been taken other places in the world and grown, and it just hasn't produced the same flavour. So it seems to be that clone, the right terroir, put it in the right place, and you get Margaret River Chardonnay, and it's hard to replicate.
So, okay, so we don't have the Chardonnay yet, but I have tasted it, and it's freaking fantastic. It's actually, I'm not a Chardonnay person. I'm not a Chardonnay lover. And specifically, I don't particularly, I'm full disclosure, I don't really like Australian Chardonnay, but I mean, Umamu Chardonnay blew me away. It was fantastic. So would you give credit to the clone? Would you give credit to yourself for, growing great Chardonnay? Like, what would you, is it the clone?
I think those two things. I think the Margaret River terroir, being that maritime terroir, is so different to many of the Australian terroirs. So you've got a really gentle ripening cycle for Chardonnay, but the clone is the champion out of that process. Absolutely. Because, you can say the great sites will produce it better, but without that clone, you'll be more back in the pack with the other Chardonnays around the world. Yeah.
And not hiding behind oak or anything like that either.
It doesn't need to. It's really weird. What you get, Marcia, is you get like a bunch, and it'll have tiny berries and big berries, and the actual clone has a virus in it. And what that virus does is prevent it's setting really well on the bunch. So you've got these big berries, you've got these little berries. So when you crush it up and you press it gently, you get a high acid from some berries, high fruit flavor from other berries, huge richness, all packaged in one bunch. So it's a bit dysfunctional that it's a virus causing the issue, but rather than fight with it, we've ridden with it and we've defined ourselves on it.
Yeah. I mean, not unusual. Lots of biotypes out there that are virus affected a form of another biotype, and they're the better one. So it's not unusual. You're not saying anything weird to me at all. So all right, well, that's really great. I'm glad we actually talked about the Chardonnay, even though we're not tasting it. So
yeah, digressed.
I think Terry's going to be bringing it in. I think it is coming in to the market. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check with him.
I hope so.
Yeah, and I know. I think there's a rosé as well. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
And what is that made from?
Cab Franc.
Okay. Ooh. All right. See, you had me at Cab Franc.
Always surprises.
I like Cab Franc. Okay, so let's get into the wines here. So we've got 4 to talk about here. So we're gonna go into the Sauvignon Blanc first. We've got the 2013 Sauvignon Blanc here.
Is a bit of oak in it.
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about this wine. So first of all, again, so 2013, we're dealing with a 8-year-old Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah.
Margaret River, which again is kind of wild, right? To think about.
It's the nature of Umamu is we're not trying to make wines for a moving market. We want to make wines for time and balance.
Yeah. So it's all about, when to release the wines, when the wines are at their best, that you think that they're going to show the best.
And I mean, it's also a journey with the wine too. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't drink some of these wines at 2-3 years old. But when you put a wine together the way we're trying to do, we really want to know that you can still drink it later. And, there's a preference in wine, and people enjoy different flavors as they come through. And, I think this one here, I think it's taken a few years for the oak and the fruit to come together. And, I think it's at a really good spot. And I know it's a crazy thing, but the thing about this wine, I see, is the acid is still there. And, the biggest risk you've got with these aromatics sort of varietals is if the acid falls away, they come across as flabby and, you know, a bit past it. But to me, this wine still has so much usable acid.
Yeah, and just like not like, so, you know, if people maybe think Australian Sauvignon Blanc is like New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc.
No, they're very different. And look, it's a really different climate.
This is beautiful. Like, this is just stunning. So was it a good harvest? Was 2013 a good harvest? 13
was a cracker. Really, really easy vintage to get through, gentle on its way through. Didn't rush you. Let you pick things when you wanted to pick them. Let things sort of come together in the vineyard. No, it's got, yeah, it's you know, it's got some really light, toasty lemon notes to me, and it really sort of comes together. A little bit of smokiness, but just structure. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. These are, for me, these are very reminiscent of Bordeaux Sauvignon Blancs for sure. And that's where we want to be. Perfect. Yeah. It's a really family wine, you know, between the Saw family. There was a couple little notes on it between Mr. and Mrs. Saw. It's a really wine speaking of place and family. Yeah, yeah. And these are all. So I noticed that there's estate is on the bottle. So are these grapes that are grown on the property, or are these grapes owned by Umamu? 100%. Okay. Yeah. So you buy any grapes at all? Umamu wine is grown on Umamu Estate. Okay. Okay. So how much land under vine then? So you've got about 16 hectares. Sorry, I'm a hectare person. Yep. Everyone. About 16 hectares under vine. The Sauvignon Blanc's about 1.5 hectares. It was planted back in 1982, I think. So fairly mature, big vines. Mm-hmm. It says I have 1987 on my sheets. Oh God, you got me. Yeah. These came right from Terry. So you've got notes. That's not fair. I haven't got any notes. Sorry. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So, you know, those of you who are watching, you know, I give all of the credit in the world to all of these Australian producers that I'm speaking to, because they're all getting up really early to talk to me. So thank you for doing that. Thank you. That's crazy. Crazy. We're crazy. So how many bottles then of the Sauvignon Blanc gets made on average every year then? We don't make huge parcels, so it will change a little bit year to year, and I'm not sure going back to the 13, Charmaine would be best for that one, but it's probably, for me, when it leaves the vineyard, about 3-4 tons, so it's going to equate to about 3,000 bottles. You know, it's a small, it's always small for the moment. Never big, at least. Carry on. Yeah, and look, if there's any surplus of grapes, we will probably sell them to another producer. We're not really about trying to maximise our production. We would go into the vineyard, we'd look for the best parcel, and that would go to the estate fruit, and anything else we can sell on. So we're not forced by the size of the vineyard to make a certain amount every year. It's more of a selective process to say, if that variety is performing that year and we think it's good enough, and we can find a discrete patch that we believe will make the quality that we would like you guys to have in Umamu wines, then we'll make a parcel. Yeah, cool. And here, little old Alberta, we get some of this Umamu wine here, so we're pretty lucky to have this wine, I think, in our market. Oh, we're lucky in our family. Yeah. What does Umamu mean? Look, for me, it's about balance, and it's about, you know, a sense of a synchrony on the land. I think to everyone it's going to mean something slightly different, but I think it's always going to rotate back to that what you're doing is something that you can perpetuate, that you're doing in a certain sense of balance with everything around you. Yeah. Yeah. So this wine, carry on, sorry. If you get a vineyard, I mean, it's, compared to most vineyards, it's amazing. It's basically a forest with a small sort of amount of clearing cut through the middle. There was some old paddocks before we got there, and the vineyard's planted. So essentially you've got a big dam and just forest either side of you. Okay. Very cool. Yeah. So this one is regular. The Sauvignon Blanc we have on the shelf for $28.99 on sale.
right now until next week, the end of next week, for $24.69. And for those of you that collect rewards, you will get double rewards points if you buy this wine. So on to the Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend. And again, this is a 2010, so this is even older than the Sauvignon Blanc that we have. And again, remarkable that we're seeing an 11-year-old Australian white wine in the market. And I'm not sure if you read my notes at all, but my manager is really fond of these wines, and he took them to one of his blind tastings. And many of the people at the table swore it was a Bordeaux, or high quality Sauvignon Blanc from Sancerre, in the Loire Valley, that sort of thing. It was just so, one of the ladies in the tasting said this reminded her of her former boss's kitchen in France. That's what she remembered being there. That's how reminiscent this wine is. So those of you who are fond of white Bordeaux, you need to try this Umamu Sauvignon Blanc Semillon blend, because it's out of this world fantastic. And I had a question to ask you, the percentages of Sauvignon Blanc versus Semillon in this blend.
I'll probably get stitched up again because it was like 10, 12, 11 years ago. But generally, mostly we sort of aim for around 60 to 70 Sauvignon Blanc and maybe 30 to 40 Semillon. It does change a little bit each year, but that's roughly, I mean, as Australians, we shorten everything. So we just call it SBS.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's such a mess to get out any other way.
Well, do you want me to tell you?
Oh, go on.
Well, according to the notes that I have, and I was pretty astounded by this, and I have to, on my original notes, I put a note to ask you what the blend was, and then I actually, the note provided for me on here. It's almost half and half, which is quite astounding. So 54 Sauvignon Blanc, 46 Sem. So yeah, SB. You must not grow that much Semillon, though.
No, we've only got 1 hectare of Semillon, so yeah, it's not a big area. Get about 6-7 tons a year. The freshness in it is just amazing, and I think the time has given it more presence as a wine. I think sometimes when you get this blend young, I think it can rush at you, but it doesn't hang with you. And I still get this as a fresh wine, and I think many people would be really fooled by the age of it. But what I think time has given it is just when you just sit back from it after 10 or 13 seconds, you can still feel that wine coming at you. And that's such a rare thing, without oak, without tannin, without phenolics, to have a wine that can really stay with you. And I think you can't achieve that quickly. That's time. Just
really lovely, herbaceous citrus notes, just like, really, really popping out of the glass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. So again, like 11 years old, and this could probably, how long could you age this for?
Oh, look, I think in some ways, Marcia, this is a celebration of a screw cap. I don't know if you could achieve these results with cork.
Yeah, agreed. That's the beauty of the Stelvin, is the freshness that is always maintained. And I remember another store I used to work at. I remember we had some Hill of Grace in the store, in a beautiful wood box under screw cap. And it was just, and this would have been 10 years ago already, right?
Yep.
And how odd, like this super, expensive niche shishi wine, and it's under screw cap. But the more we talk about screw cap and how it just really keeps freshness in wine, it makes more sense to me. It didn't 10 years ago, but
Prue Henschke, she's always been very obsessive with detail and things like that. And I think the Henschke saw really early that the amount of effort they're putting in to making this, they wanted to maximize its chance of aging. And the only way they saw moving that forward was to put under screw cap. And you took pioneers with top shelf wines to take that plunge for the pack to follow.
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's that's taking a real chance, I think, right? And that's, the conversation, the education to consumers saying, hey, you're going to have fresher wine, you're going to have less faults in your wine, and, you're going to be happier.
In any other commodity or, material produced, having a fault level at the level of cork would just be unacceptable. And I guess as a young producing country, we just said, well, let's just go with it. So, it's been probably 25 years we've been heavily into screw caps. Some markets came with us very quickly, and other markets still resist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of the modern Australian winemaker. And for us, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's excellent. It's absolutely. It's beautiful. And I have to tell you that Terry poured these for me this morning. Well, I was going to say you maybe were sleeping, but maybe if it's harvest, you probably weren't.
Not as much as I'd like to be.
Yeah. So this has been sitting in my glass literally like all day. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it hasn't fallen over.
No. And of course, not even like this is room temperature now. So it hasn't been chilled. So that to me is a great test of quality when you can get all of those tasting notes and all of those aromas, those fresh aromas, in a glass that's room temperature.
Definitely.
So very, very nice. This one, folks, is $32.99 on the shelf on sale for $27.99. And again, if you're collecting points, double rewards on this wine. So you should buy one because it's fantastic, especially all you white Bordeaux lovers out there. So
when you guys are coming into the summer season, I think it's a fantastic wine to have around.
Yes, we actually I think all of our snow is gone, so that's good. That's good. Right. So, one more thing I wanted to ask you about that. So have you done any side-by-side tastings with any white Bordeaux with your Umamu SBS?
I don't know if we've done one as a company, like direct as an estate. It'd be really cool to do though.
You should. Yeah.
Definitely. And it'd be good to throw another younger one that's more in the traditional bracket in there, just to throw out a local one, just to see where Umamu's sitting, where the pack's sitting, and where Bordeaux's sitting. It'd be really fun.
Totally, that would be really fun. A great exercise, and you can really see where your quality is too. Yeah, fantastic. All right, Shiraz, of course, typical, beloved grape of Australia.
Yeah.
The 2011 is what we have here. So 10 years old. Here we go with this age again. Remarkable that we're seeing these. Yeah, pretty fantastic. So again, in our market, in the North American market as a whole, we see a ton of Australian Shiraz, and of course we know the hype and the height of Australian Shiraz. Was just huge. And I mean, it really boosted Australia as a winemaking country. But of course, we don't see much from Western Australia.
No. It's Shiraz is probably the hardest for us to do because we have so many big cousins that do a very different product, really, Marcia. And where, when I start thinking about Margaret River and a few other little regions around Australia, I start thinking about Syrah.
Yeah.
And I start thinking, where are we more comparable to? And I think the South Australian regions, Barossa particularly, has probably created its own genre. And that's like the word Shiraz. And as Australian as I can say it, that is Shiraz. Whereas to me, I think Margaret River is probably Shiraz, or if you want to say it's Syrah. It's more it's more delicate, it's more fine. The problem being is a lot of consumers will buy an Australian Shiraz with expectations of Shiraz and then either be pleasantly surprised or bewildered when they get a Syrah. But I think if you know your own's and you know what you're looking for, I think this lines up really well with Châteauneuf-du-Pape or something around that sort of part of the world, much better than it does most of the rest of Australia.
Yeah, and again, moving away from that, that reputation of jammy, big jammy Shiraz, he said, more to the really complex but balanced and elegant, as you say, Syrah, right? You know, and like you said, Barossa has really created a name for themselves for Shiraz. So why should consumers though buy from Western Australia? Because it's so different, do you think?
I think if you're looking for something that isn't jammy, it isn't hot, you know, I find a lot of heat in a lot of those Shirazes. I'm not looking for a wine with a lot of heat in it. I'd like to, you know, be able to have a wine over dinner and not, you know, struggle to drive home. So I look at these wines as more of a refined, and you know, we certainly would say that it'd be better to find someone that's more suitable, that knows what they want to buy it, because I think if you like Syrah from around the world, you will enjoy Margaret River Shiraz.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have the odd, I mean, it's coming, right? It's getting out there. So we do have the odd consumer who's specifically looking, right?
Absolutely.
For those, do you have wine from Margaret River? You know, like it's actually coming out, right? So that's a good thing. It's a very good thing.
And for us, I mean, we've got 10,000 people that live here. You know, it's an amazing achievement to be able to get to Alberta and, you know, the far edges of the world when we're all the way down here.
Yeah, yeah. Have you always lived in Western Australia?
I have lived since I was 10 years old, so long enough to not know much different.
Okay, all right. And is all your family in Western Australia, Colin?
Yeah, all my direct family. I've got a lot of family around the world. I've got some family, I think, even in Canada somewhere I haven't seen for a very long time. But yeah, typical of colonials, we're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, you know, us Commonwealth people, we got to stick together, right?
Like, you know, another cousin across the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. That's funny. So this is again a really different style of Shiraz, and I think it's lovely. So this just came in to the store last week, I think. So it's only been on the shelf, maybe for 2 weeks, 1 or 2 weeks, not very long. And
absolutely love it. You know,
yeah.
To me, it's just so much more refined and it's gentle and it's considered. And yeah, real classy block drop in there.
It's rich and juicy, but it's not jammy. And you know, the tannins are very well integrated. It's not what's our alcohol here? 13.8, so it's not really boozy. You know, it's very well at all. So that's very good. And it's a little bit more expensive, but worth the price tag. So this one is regular $41.99. But on sale for $35.69. So take a chance on some really good Australian Shiraz from Western Australia. Was there anything else that you wanted to say about the Shiraz at all, Colin?
No, I think we sort of covered really where I think the differentiation is. You know, I think for us, we want to get it through we look at berry fruits and we look at the sort of light berry fruits, red berry. We want to sort of get the profile of fruit to the dark berry fruits, and then we're close in it. So we definitely don't want to see a jammy product come through, but we don't want to see it too lean as well. So it's that little sweet spot in the middle. Yeah,
that balance for sure. Excellent. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we are talking about the Cabernet. So again, we have the 11 here. So again, a 10-year-old Cabernet from Western Australia, and this one for people coming to the store, this one is located in the Vintages room, which is the room that I manage, the fun room, the room where everything is cool and nichey and collectible, because this one is also over $50. So that's where you're going to find it, is in the Vintages room, and we'll talk about the price after we talk about the wine. I'm a fan of Australian Cab. I don't drink hardly any Shiraz, but I love Australian Cabernet. I find it to be, I really get that sense of place from Cabernet. I don't drink Napa Cabs. I don't like them. And people are watching and get mad at me. I don't care, because if I'm going to drink New World Cabernet, I love Australian Cabernet, because as I said, this terroir, I get it every time. And that's what wine is all about, right?
Absolutely. And the energy that goes into getting a Cabernet right in Margaret River is incredible. You know, it really is. I've always laughed. It's a variety that's travelled everywhere, but travels really badly. You know, you can't grow Cabernet anywhere. There are only certain places in the world that will grow Cabernet that you just described. One that you want to come back to, one that will tell you a story in a bottle. So, you know, what we want is a region that can hang it a really long time. So if you hang it in a really hot region, and I'm not going to say the one you just mentioned, but you did, you tend to go to jam, because what you're trying to do is ripen those tannins, and the sugar is rushing in there so quickly that you're achieving a big alcohol wine, but with a tannin that you just haven't quite got there. If you get to a really, really sort of balanced region like Margaret River, you can sort of get to your sugar level that you want to, and then you can leave it out there for another 2 weeks. 3 weeks, but the sugar doesn't really go up. It just intensifies, and you just really feel those tannins rounding off, and that's when you start to get into the realm of iconic Cabernet. You get vineyards that won't do that. They're sort of sliding down into sort of lower premium levels. You get some vineyards that will just hang it to the point where you just keep tasting it, and every day you can just feel that profile change. And then you get to a point, you know, the good winemakers I work with, it's like a journey. We'll meet every 2 days in there, and we'll walk through the same place and just say no. And then we'll come back another 2 days later and do the whole thing again. And then you just get to a point where you both look at each other and think, you know what, I reckon we're just about there. And it's such an intensity. It is something that we can hope people can feel in the bottle, because the energy consideration to get it right is pretty intense.
Mm-hmm. And again, without losing that acid level, that's so important as well, right? Yeah. But just phenomenal. Like, there's no bricking at all in this wine. Like, there's no garnet at all, so it's not even showing its age at all. And I love that. Like, it's just so fresh still.
I reckon right now, Marcia, it's in a stage where, you know, it's a hard one to describe, but I think it picks up like a fruit sweetness, and it's not a sugar related thing because it's a totally dry wine. But as the tannin fully rounds at sort of 10-year mark in these wines, there's a new sweetness that comes into the fruit, because the grippier tannins have sort of let it go, and you know, you taste it out, that real sort of blackberries just comes through, and that sort of beautiful profile that sometimes is caught up when the wines are young and it's still a bit aggressive. But that is just in its drinking purity right now. How long will it go for? It's a preference thing on flavour, because flavours will develop in a bottle, and some people will really enjoy some of those flavours and some will like it right now. But, you know, it's a pretty safe product.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's got a nice, actually, combination of aromas, and, you know, underneath there's a bit of a bouquet coming, so that cassis is really ever present here for sure. You know, that minty eucalyptus that I always get in a. I
guess that's probably, it's really cool that you mentioned that, because the biggest enemy for us with Cabernet, probably for the last decade, has been the fear of green. The market sort of gave us this message that said, look, we don't want any green in wine, so we tend to be chasing it out all the time. But some of it has to be in there in the sense of balance, because if you take all the herbaceousness out of a Cabernet, it becomes bland and boring. But if it's overpowering, it's a fault. And if it's not present, it's a fault. And it's just, once again, going back to sort of our philosophy of balance. If you just get it in the right amount, it gives you interest with fruit and then tannin balance and a structure. And that's a really good Cabernet. And to take it out completely, I think you lose the varietal interest. And you might as well just be a red wine, dry red wine.
Yeah, yeah. But, you know, I mean, when you talk about green, I think of green as in like stocky and underripe. You know, this is not that at all.
No.
And you know, like there's even a little bit of leather coming in underneath. You know,
and that's hang time thing, Marcia. So you just leave it out there, and you're not going to get in that sort of, you know, you start with quite a capsicum flavour at the beginning of your ripening process. You've got that real methoxypyrazine sort of character. Then you move into, it's like cucumber. It goes through like a cucumber phase. You're like, nah, this still sort of has a slight overtone. And then you start moving into your red fruits and thinking, yeah, okay, well, if you're not a real brave wine producer, you might pick at red fruits. But then you say, nah, let's go next step. And then you start to get your dark fruits. And that's when you start to get into a position where you can age your wine.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It really has a lot of layers that I
pretty
really
cool. It's getting picked right now.
Cool. It's like he puts them in a box and send them to me, like just the grapes. So
Well, you got 10 years. You're gonna have to do something with it, Marcia.
I know, and it's just like and Australia is a region I have not yet been to, and it's definitely somewhere I want to go and experience some harvest. I've done harvest in South Africa.
Okay, all right. We'll have to get you over. You'll love it.
But I would definitely love to experience both sides of Australia. You know, Western Australia and Southeast Australia for sure. And it would be cool just to see the differences and that sort of thing with the harvest and the grapes and the wine and all of that stuff. And I think that's just would be fantastic. So anyway, when we can all travel again.
Yeah, hopefully soon.
Yeah. So I know that when I spoke to John from Faber a few weeks back, you know, he's like, we're all fine here because we can't leave Western Australia. So
we're like in the best jail in the world. It's like we can't come out, but you want to stay in.
Yeah, but you also, you don't have to wear masks at all, hey?
No, but zero COVID in our community. So West Australia, because of that isolation thing, you know, we go back to the start of our conversation, we've got like a desert on one side of us and ocean on the other side of us. So it's been quite easy in a quarantine sense to control. So we have some really rigid, I guess, government structures that have prevented our movement, which some countries just wouldn't accept. But as a community, we've sort of embraced that and said, okay, we'll take those sacrifices. The biggest probably ongoing one for us is we rely on backpackers for labour. I mean, our sort of French and Italian and Spanish university sort of graduates are a lot of our labour force. So I've still got some of them, but I mean, some of the backpackers I've had now for 3 years, the same ones, because they've got stuck with us. Yeah. So they're saying, look, I don't want to go home. I mean, I'm going to stay here because it's such a free life still. But, you know, we just don't have any new ones coming in. So we've almost got like a crazy labour crisis going on at the same time.
Yeah, I guess I never thought of that, but that's a good point. So, well, hopefully you get your harvest done in a good time.
Yep, I think we'll be right this year.
How is 2021 looking?
It looks good. The Cabernet, like I said, we went through it yesterday. Looked pretty exciting. I think it was probably a tough one to get there, but I think if you just sort of persevered through, we had a couple little rain fronts come through, which we never like. We always like dry weather, but yeah, no, the tannin looked pretty ripe yesterday. The berries were definitely ready to come off, so we're pretty excited. Chardonnay, yeah, looked a bit probably tougher than some years, but yeah, looked really delicate, and yeah, I think it'll be really, really cool modern Chardonnay. If we're trying to make that older style, I think it would have been more difficult, but we don't tend to make that style as much anymore. It's more about acid and line. So yeah, no, I think everything's come together pretty good. Nice. It's taken a few years of my life again, but it's come together pretty good.
Excellent, good to hear. Before I forget, the Cabernet, $57.99 is regular price on the Cabernet. On sale right now for $49.29. You can get an amazing Cabernet for under 50 bucks. So that's awesome. We love that. So come on in. As I said, they're on sale until end of next week. And you can also